such harmony. Qu'on ouvre les portes, that the doors be open. Statements by members. Alors.
Order.
Déclaration de député. L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Mr. Speaker, a broad Quebec coalition reminded the minister and the media today of her main responsibility, that is to protect culture. Cultural and business personalities like TVA, Bell Media, Télé-Québec, Cogeca, TV5, the SOCAN, CSN, the FTQ, and Evenco called on her directly. They are saying no to a Netflix privilege. No one wants to pay a new tax. But everyone wants those taxes that do apply to all. That's called tax fairness. Quebec culture is dynamic, and the creativity of our artists is the envy of the world. Rather than throw up roadblocks in front of the artists by giving a free pass to Netflix, Amazon, Google, and others, the Minister of Heritage should start working for our creators, and she has to hear the message from the coalition. No to Netflix privileges. The Honourable Member for Vaudreuil-Soulanges. Mr. Speaker, today I had the pleasure to join several impressive young entrepreneurs at a reception in honour of Futurepreneur, a not-for-profit organization that has been nurturing the entrepreneurial passion of young Canadians for more than 20 years.
Futurepreneur has provided financing and mentoring to nearly 10,000 young women and men, launching more than 8,000 new businesses and creating over 42,000 jobs from coast to coast to coast. Our government understands that small business is the backbone of our economy, our communities, and our future. And that's why, Mr. Speaker, I'm proud that our government invested an additional $14 million in Futurepreneur so they can continue to help aspiring young entrepreneurs bring their business ideas to life and to market.
I invite all members of Parliament to join with me in welcoming these young Canadian entrepreneurs, the CEO of Futurepreneur, Julia Deans, and her whole team. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Foothills.
I rise today in the House on a sad occasion to commemorate the life of an inspiring Albertan, Ed Nelson, who passed away. A pillar to his community who always fought for the underdog, Mr. Nelson was a legend in Canadian ranching and politics. After serving in the Royal Canadian Navy in World War II, Ed returned home and was determined to increase and grow Canada's cattle industry and preserve vital grazing land along the eastern slopes. He, along with several other World War II veterans, returned to their family farms and helped raise $1 million to form a grazing co-op and purchase what is now the world-renowned Waldron Ranch, comprised of precious native fescue grassland. Revered for his stubborn battles with the Canadian Wheat Board, Ed was a hero for Canadian farmers, and in 1987 was a founding member of the Reform Party, and certainly one of his proudest moments was seeing the end of the Canadian Wheat Board. But Mr. Nelson was an icon in his community, and his contributions will last for generations. Our hearts go out to his family, his friends, and his community. Ed, you will be missed, and it was truly an honour to know you.
The Honourable Member for Don Valley West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, as we celebrate Finland's 100th anniversary of independence from the Russian Republic in 1917, we reflect on the rich relationship Canada has with Finland and the tremendous contribution of Finnish Canadians. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, Canada was one of the main beneficiaries of Finnish emigrants. Finnish names are still common in the cities of Thunder Bay, Sudbury, and my hometown of Sault Ste. Marie. Today, there are almost 144,000 Canadians with Finnish ancestry. Over 15,000 claim Finnish as their mother tongue. Some of them live in Suomi Koti, a tremendous seniors residence in Don Valley West, and worship at the Agricola, Lutheran, and Salam Pentecostal churches. We share the same values of democracy, good governance, equality, rule of law, and respect of human rights. More importantly, though, we share a strong passion for ice hockey and a deep friendship off the ice. Happy Independence Day, Finland. Kiitos.
The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, today I'd like to highlight the success of an individual from Mont-Saint-Hilaire, Laurent Duvernay-Tardif. Earlier this year, he became the highest paid Canadian in the history of the NFL after signing a contract with Kansas City. We're paying tribute to this citizen of Mont-Saint-Hilaire not only for his contract, but because of his character and his contribution to the community. Not only does he play football, but he's studying medicine at McGill University, and he is even committed to practicing in Montreal once he has ended his career in football. And finally, he started his own foundation to encourage healthy living and physical activities amongst young people. But, Mr. Speaker, there's only one more thing we'd like to wish this most interesting man in the NFL, and that is a Super Bowl win. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député de Sackville-Preston-Chester.
The honourable member.
Today we stand in the warmth of this house. My family in Nova Scotia lives in the warmth of our home. But 100 years ago today, the Halifax explosion left 6,000 people homeless, wandering through the wreckage in a major maritime blizzard. Nova Scotian students could tell you the history. The SS Mont Blanc collided with the SS Imo, and this explosion killed 2,000 people and injured 9,000. This explosion could be felt across my riding of Sackville-Preston-Chesapeake. It's also said that even in Cape Breton, 250 kilometers away, it was felt as well. Today, across the province of Nova Scotia, we're commemorating the brave rescue workers who played a major role, and we're also honoring the victims. So, Mr. Speaker, in closing, let's remember Halifax with pride. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Brantford-Brant.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to pay tribute to Roger Davis, a Brant County businessman, a philanthropist, and a great Canadian. A rags to riches story began in 1957 with Roger's single-handed determination to succeed. 61 years later, Davis Fuels exemplifies a service to community philosophy modeled by its founder and family. With business success, a pay-it-forward attitude, and giving spirit, Roger donated generously and unselfishly, supporting many organizations and local initiatives. Even more importantly, he reached out to help many in need, quietly and without fanfare. Many community projects, sports teams, clubs, and causes would simply not have existed without the support of Roger and Davis Fuels. Roger passed away on November the 23rd. To his wife, Edith, and family, we're privileged to have known a man of such high character and virtue. His immense influence on our community will never be forgotten.
The honourable member for Laval-les-Îles. Mr. Speaker, today marks the sad anniversary of the death of 14 female students from the École Polytechnique de Montréal, whose lives were taken by a madman. December is an opportunity to educate Canadians about this phenomena, sadly, because there is still too much gender violence in our society. This violence will never be eliminated until there is respect, equality, solidarity, equity, inclusion, and justice between men and women. We also have to break the silence and eliminate the impunity that benefit these aggressors. We have to act on people's mentality, and we have to foster a culture of equality for all. This day is also a day of hope, because we have to believe in the ability of human beings to become better, better, and better again. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The honourable member for Laurentides-Labelle. Mr. Speaker, in 2022, China will host the Winter Olympics. In order to motivate its citizens to practice winter sports, it needs to look to the expertise of the best. Canada is a world leader in winter sports, and I've often said How our riding of Laurentides-Labelle has influenced our entire country in this area. Well, our expertise is also internationally renowned. Today, we've had the pleasure to host in Ottawa young hockey players from the Polyvalente des Monts de Saint-Agathe, who are true stars in China. On the 30th of July, 10 players and 4 coaches inaugurated the Olympic facilities in Zhending, and the match was televised live to 150 million viewers. The partnership continues with the collaboration of the Laurentides School Board, the Saint-Adèle Chamber of Commerce, and a delegation of young Saint-Agathe players will represent Canada at the end of January match. There will also be Chinese delegates who will come here over the next few years. In 2022, we will win gold at the Olympics, and our national anthem will be heard by all. But nowhere will there be more pride than in Laurentides-Labelle.
For Calgary Heritage.
Did he say my name?
Yep, you're good.
Mr. Speaker, brave Canadians at home and abroad accept the dangerous duty of protecting us, and their work does not end at Christmas. As we enjoy our holidays with family and friends, police officers and firefighters in our communities and our military abroad will be away from their own loved ones while they are working to protect ours and standing on guard for us. In 2017, the names added to the honor roll of police personnel killed in the line of duty expanded the tragic list to over 850 officers. The Canadian Fallen Firefighters Foundation ceremony this year sadly added 13 new names to the list of over 1,300 firefighters who have lost their lives since 1848. And one need only view the Book of Remembrance in Parliament's Memorial Chamber to understand the sheer number of soldiers who have paid the ultimate price. May all our wishes this Christmas be for the safe return home of these brave men and women who serve to protect us and keep us safe.
The honourable member for Nipissing-Temiskaming.
Mr. Speaker, Ani, bonjour. Today, more than ever, I'm very proud to say Nipissing-Temiskaming Nindonjiba. Later this afternoon, debate will begin in the House of Commons on Bill C-61, which creates the Anishinaabeg education system designed by the Anishinaabeg Nation for Anishinaabeg students, the largest First Nation education self-government agreement in Canada. I am honored that the Anishinaabeg Education Board will be based in Nipissing-Temiskaming on Nipissing First Nation land. It will deliver culturally relevant and community-tailored education programs and services so that current and future generations of students can learn and honor their culture and past while getting the skills and knowledge they need to succeed in the future. Congratulations to First Nations leaders and Canadian parliamentarians for putting students first and ensuring a high-quality education that will propel them to success. Chimigwech.
The honourable member for Kingston and the Islands.
Mr. Speaker, my actions matter. These 3 small words have the ability to help change the lives and well-being of all women. December 6th is the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. We have come so far and yet still have miles to go. There is no excuse. We, men and women alike, must stand together and give our voices to stop violence that has been affecting the lives of women for generations. Every woman has the right to enjoy a life that is free from violence, yet the amount of women who do not enjoy this freedom is staggering. So today, tomorrow, and always, I ask you to join me in speaking out to end violence against women. Thank you.
Honourable member for York Simcoe.
100 years ago, Halifax was a bustling wartime port city. It served as a primary base for the Royal Canadian Navy and facilitated the transportation of tens of thousands of troops and millions of tons of supplies destined to support the Canadian, American, and British troops fighting in the First World War. Tragedy struck on the morning of December 6, 1917, when the vessels Imo and Mont Blanc collided, setting off a dreadful, deafening explosion that destroyed everything in its path with its initial blast and ignited a raging fire that swept across the city. It was the largest ever man-made explosion at that time and shattered windows in Truro over 100 kilometers away. The Halifax explosion resulted in the death of nearly 2,000 people,
injured and blinded 9,000 more, and forced nearly 25,000 into homelessness. Shocked and saddened by the news of such devastation, aid poured in from across Canada and, in fact, around the world to provide relief to the survivors. Today, we remember those who perished in the explosion, celebrate the heroes of the day, and show our continued appreciation of those who came to help Halifax in its time of need.
Hear, hear.
The honourable member for Thunder Bay, Rainy River.
Mr. Speaker, as Ontario's only First Nation Member of Parliament, I'd like to welcome all First Nation leaders from across Canada who have come to Ottawa for the Special Chiefs Assembly, and to recognize the chiefs and community leaders from Ontario who helped make the Anishinaabeg Education Agreement a reality. On August 16th of this year, the Government of Canada and 23 First Nations of the Anishinaabeg Nation signed a historic self-government agreement on education. This agreement recognizes these communities' law-making powers over education and supports the creation of the Anishinaabeg education system. Through the leadership of these communities, Anishinaabeg students will now be able to attend community-run schools with a curriculum that teaches Anishinaabeg language, culture, and history. This is an important step in building the nation-to-nation relationship and is something that all Canadians should take great pride in. Thank you. Merci. Miigwech.
The Honourable
Member for Rimouski-Nejet-Témiscouata-les-Basques. Mr. Speaker, on the 6th of December 1989, 14 female engineering students from the École Polytechnique de Montréal were gunned down. Violence took their lives, and a whole generation is still grieving. 28 years ago, 14 young women were killed, 14 more were injured, simply because they were women. Every year, it is our duty to honour the memory of those who saw their future brutally cut short.
Against persistent and disproportionate violence that men will never have to face. On this National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women, let's stand up and commit to building a Canada where women and girls can live without the fear of violence. Ensemble,
Together, Mr. Speaker, let us build a Canada where women and girls can freely walk without fear, work without fear, and study without fear.
The honourable member for Lethbridge.
Today we remember the largest mass shooting in Canadian history. One where 14 young women were robbed of their lives by the unjustified hatred of one individual. In their memory, we take a moment to pause and to honor the lives they lived, the dreams they held, and the future that was robbed from them. The 14 victims were chemical, mechanical, civil, and material engineers, a nursing student, and a future budget clerk. They were women pursuing their dreams. They were daughters, sisters, and friends. Sadly, violence against women and girls continues to take many forms, and the number of names added to public memory is ever growing. Today, let us resolve to do all that we can to strengthen the justice system and to positively impact societal values and cultural norms. As members in this House, let us choose to lead by example. Let us commit to doing all that we can to honor and empower women to be all that they can be.
The Honourable Member for Dorval-Lachine-LaSalle. Mr. Speaker, today is a solemn day in Canada. It is the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. And it is an important day in the 16 days of activism against gender violence. On December 6th, we remember the 14 young female engineering students of the Polytechnique de Montréal who were killed in 1989. Their tragic death shocked and saddened our country, and the 6th of December is a call to action to eliminate violence against women in Canada.
Their voices and support using the hashtag #MyActionsMatter. Use your voices now and throughout the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. I encourage everyone to honor the memory of these 14 promising young women by attending a vigil on December 6th and by choosing to always speak out against all forms of gender-based violence. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Following discussions among representatives of all parties in the House, I understand that there is an agreement to observe a moment of silence. I now invite the House to rise and observe a minute of silence in memory of the victims of the tragic event that happened 28 years ago at École Polytechnique in Montreal.
Oral questions, questions orales. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, as we commemorate this Day of Action against violence against women, we think of those who have lost their life in an unimaginable example of horror. And there are other women who live in horror every day, live in fear every day. We know that I know that all members want that every girl, every woman should be able to live in safety. We want to make sure that we can ensure these women and girls a far more safe and secure future. The Honourable Minister of the Status of Women.
For his opening remarks on this very important day in Canadian history. Coast to coast to coast, tears will be shed, candles will be lit, roses will be laid, and we all resolve our commitment to do better by the women and girls of this country. We remember the 14 young women whose stories ended tragically. We acknowledge those whose names or stories we may never know. And I know every honourable member in this House will do everything they can to prevent and end gender-based violence.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberal attack on small businesses is getting worse. Yesterday, the government announced that the new changes will come into effect, the enforcement will come into effect on January 1st, but that the details of the new tax hikes won't be made public until the budget is tabled sometime in the spring. That's like asking a football team to play an entire game under a new set of rules, but then not telling them the new rules until halftime. So can the Minister explain how he expects small businesses to operate under these conditions?
Honourable Minister of Fisheries.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the Leader of the Opposition for the question. As he knows, one of the important things that small business owners across the country know is that our government has lowered the small business tax, which will benefit thousands and thousands of corporations and create, we believe, hundreds of thousands of jobs for middle-class Canadians. That's something that we committed to in the last election campaign. That's something our government was proud to do. And with respect to the changes for private corporations, Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition knows very well that we said those details will be well known before the implementation date of January 1st, and I know he's enthusiastic to understand that good news as well.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the government had to get dragged kicking and screaming into fulfilling their campaign promise. It was only because of Conservative pressure that they did that. And I can assure my valued colleague and friend, that no one in the small business community thinks that good news is coming on January 1st. Nobody believes that a 73% tax rate on small business investment it will be a good thing for the economy. So what kind of good news can small business owners expect? Will the good news be that they're scrapping their tax hikes?
Honourable Minister of Fisheries.
Mr. Speaker, one thing we can tell the Leader of the Opposition is that not many small business owners that I've met believe that phony 73% figure that he keeps throwing around on the House of Commons as well. So one thing, Mr. Speaker, that Canadians know is our government is committed to supporting small businesses. We recognize the economic importance for Canadians all across the country. Small business owners, entrepreneurs are the economic engine of our country. We will be supporting them by lowering their taxes, and we will continue to support them as they create the jobs that middle-class Canadians are looking forward to.
The Honourable Member for Richmond-Arthabasca. Mr. Speaker, the government announced tax reform measures over the summer holidays. That's about 140 days ago. So, this is a reform that will have negative repercussions for businesses, for workers, for people who create jobs all over Canada. This reform is to come into effect on January 1st. That's not many days from now, and business people still don't know the details. What is this government waiting for to give small business owners a clear answer? Mr. Speaker, I don't want to have to correct my colleague, but what we announced over this past summer was a consultation with Canadians. We listened, we met with people all over Canada, we met with business owners, small business owners. Mr. Speaker, we listened to these people and we are acting to reduce their taxes, and we're bringing greater fairness to our tax system. The details will be known very shortly and will be ready for January 1st. The Honourable Member for Richmond-Arthabasca. Mr. Speaker, no one in Canada believes that this government is truly consulting. What it really does is to impose its will. We were told in this House that there would be news about these new measures very shortly. The only problem is that very shortly these measures will come into effect. On January 1st, that's in a few days, Canadians are worried, business owners are worried, Canadian workers are worried. When will these business people get the facts that they need? The Honourable Minister of Fisheries. Mr. Speaker, my honourable colleague referred to Canadian workers, and they are a great concern for our government, and it's my pleasure to let him have a very good piece of news. Mr. Speaker, our government created more than or close to 600,000 jobs over the past 2 years, and most of these jobs are full-time jobs. And economic growth in Canada is another piece of good news. There are business people in Canada who want to see their taxes cut, and we're very happy to announce once again that we will be lowering taxes for small business owners, and we will continue to help them. The Honourable Member for Rimouski-Neigette-Témiscouata-les-Basques. Mr. Speaker, the Heritage Minister decided to not make internet giants subject to the same tax rules as Canadian companies. The result is that our media are losing advertising revenue, and our broadcasters and content creators are at a complete disadvantage. But worse, the Liberals are only thinking about their image. So why does the minister not understand that she needs to act? We need a free press, and we need to help them. The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I think you know how important our culture strategy is. We know that there is going to be an impact on our culture by this wave of American media and products. We know how important the written press is, and we will be working with actors, the various stakeholders, to help them in a general way to help local journalism across Canada because we know that journalism is a pillar of our democracy. The Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, why is it then that the cultural world is not pleased with what she's been doing?
They are threatened with closure because this minister is giving digital giants preferential treatment. After 2 years, in fact, the only thing she has done is to postpone a support strategy and tell the industry that they will just have to get used to the new reality. She doesn't seem to get it. Why doesn't she understand that her inaction is jeopardizing a fundamental pillar of our democracy, a free and independent press?
Well, Minister of Canadian Heritage.
Mr. Speaker, we understand that there's been thousands of job losses in newsrooms across the country, and of course we value the importance of journalism, and especially local journalism, because we know that this is a pillar, a fundamental pillar of our democracy, and that's why every year our government supports local journalism through the Canada Periodical Fund up to $75 million. That's why we reinvested in our public broadcasters to support local news by $675 million. And that's why also we'll make sure to work with the industry to ultimately help them transition through these difficult times, to ultimately make sure that there is a sustainable business model.
The Honourable Member for Essex.
Mr. Speaker, before establishing official trade talks with China, issues with human, environmental and labour rights must be addressed. And despite the recent report on Canadian job loss due to existing trade with China, the Liberals seem keen on pushing through a deal. But once again, they are completely lacking transparency. First, the PM was going to China to talk trade. Then he wasn't. In China, he talked trade, but there was no deal. And then the last minute, his trade minister stays behind to work on a deal. What is going on? When will this government be clear with Canadians and reveal their China trade list of priorities?
The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canada is a nation, a trading nation, and is trying to diversify its markets in order that our economy be able to create good jobs. We have a commitment to trying to find a trade agreement with China, but we'll do it in our interests and while respecting our values. The Honourable Member for Berthier-Masquinongé. Mr. Speaker, according to a report commissioned by Global Affairs Canada, we know that we have already lost 105,000 jobs because of trade with China. Now the government seems to be rushing full steam ahead to initiate talks on a free trade accord with China. Does the government have the least idea about the number of Canadian jobs that will be in danger with a free trade agreement with China? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canadians are aware that our trade success is extremely important and that things take time. Canadians also understand that we have to take the time to do things well. With 600 new good jobs created in 2 years and an unemployment rate under 6%, I think we're doing quite well. The Honourable Member for Louis-Saint-Laurent. Mr. Speaker, it's a sad memory, but the Canadians will remember that in July the government made a full frontal attack on small businesses and job creators. Canadians know what is happening, but thousands of Canadians are standing up to say enough is enough. Mr. Speaker, we know that this is happening because the government has suspended certain operations. They say this is going to be done at such a time, and now it's January 1st. Can they finally tell Canadians when they will come clean? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Canadians remember that in the summer of 2015, we wondered if we were going into a recession. What the Conservatives did cost us a fortune. Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, here's the question. Here's the issue. We have the strongest growth in the G7, 600,000 jobs created, and we're doing this, but all the while cutting taxes on small businesses because we know how important small business is for our economic growth. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Louis-Saint-Laurent. Mr. Speaker, here is a clear demonstration that this government will say just about anything. The question was a clear one. When will business people when will the government tell them when they're going to bring in these tax measures, or what is what? Is there someone in the government who can finally tell job creators what is what? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I know he had a second question, so I will tell him that the details will be known very shortly, Mr. Speaker. Concerning income sprinkling, we will always stand behind small business. We will defend them. Look at how unemployment has fallen, about all the jobs we've created. The details will be known shortly, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Have the Liberals not learned a thing from being smug and brushing off serious concerns of small business owners? Yesterday, the government said that the changes wouldn't be released until the budget, and then a moment later, they said they would be released very soon. The bottom line is small business owners need to know, and they are asking this government to respect them and to let them know when these changes are going to happen. When will the Liberals stop playing games with local small businesses? Just be upfront, tell them when these changes are going to happen and exactly what those changes are.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With regards to income sprinkling, as I've mentioned in French earlier, the details will be announced very shortly, well ahead of the January 1st implementation date. And we've listened to Canadians from coast to coast to make sure that we get this right. But our goal has always been, I know that's a goal that might be a little foreign to the opposition, to bring some more fairness in our tax system. We think that's a good thing to have a tax system that's fair for everyone while supporting small business owners across the country as they create jobs, as they innovate. And that's why we've lowered the small business tax rate. Thank you.
House Leader.
Unbelievable hearing the Liberals talk about tax fairness when it was their Minister of Finance who spent the last 2 years protecting his income from taxes. Unbelievable. Dan Kelly, President of the CFIB, said that to expect business owners to make changes for January 1st with no details is appalling. It is appalling, Mr. Speaker. Simple question. Will small business owners be given any advance notice before these tax changes go into effect? Or is advance notice of tax changes only something that Liberal insiders get to have?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, as I said, we've been listening to Canadians and business owners, and the details on income sprinkling will be announced shortly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
2 years ago, around this time, the Minister of Finance increased taxes on the floor of the House of Commons, but not before he could sell his shares and realize his gains before those taxes took effect. That meant he dodged the same taxes he was imposing on others. And now he's at it again, with new tax hikes that Morneau Chappelle will not have to pay. In just 3 weeks, the minister's tax hikes on family businesses will take effect. Where are the details?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
For the second part of the member's question, I've said it. We've reviewed the submissions that we've received. The details regarding income sprinkling will be announced very shortly before the January 1st date. With regards to the first part of his question, Mr. Speaker, after the media, after so many commentators have said that these are baseless allegations that the member has been doing for a week, you would think he had listened, but I get why he doesn't want to talk about the economy, because when you look at the average growth that we've known in this government, it's twice as much as they had in 10 years. Wow. They created close to 1 million jobs in 10 years. We created 600,000 in 2 years, Mr. Speaker. That's why they don't want to talk about.
Honourable Member for Carleton. Order.
Well, the Finance Minister wants us all to cry crocodiles tears for him, Mr. Speaker. He's the one who called our small family-owned businesses a privileged few, using fancy accounting schemes to avoid paying their fair share. Yet it was he who set up companies in the Bahamas and in Alberta and other places where he did not live to lower his tax bill. It was he who sold his shares before his own tax increases came into effect. Why is it that whenever Liberals raise taxes, it's always everyone but them that is stuck with the bill?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm glad he's talked about this tax increase, because that tax increase was something we campaigned on, to increase taxes on the wealthiest 1%, to reduce them for 9 million Canadians, because we know that when the middle class is successful, when the middle class is prosperous, the economy is doing well. That's something they could never figure out. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Député de...
The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Mr. Speaker, as Liberals have neglected to appoint officers of Parliament, we know that appointments are imminent. Nevertheless, this process is neither open nor transparent. The appointment of officers of Parliament is something that should be done with real consultation, but a cloak of secrecy continues to surround the process. Do you remember the time when the Liberals promised that they would be more open and transparent, and they promised they would do better? When will they show more transparency and bring in an open process?
Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The good news is that we in fact put in place a new appointment process which supports open, transparent, and merit-based selection processes. Our aim is to identify high-quality candidates who will help to achieve gender parity and truly reflect Canada's diversity. Under our new process, we have made over 400 appointments, of which 56% are women, over 11% are visible minorities, and 10% are Indigenous, Mr. Speaker. A process that is evidently working quite well. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Skeena-Bulkley Valley.
Officers of Parliament perform some of the most important roles in Canadian democracy. They run our elections, they police lobbying, they enforce our ethical rules, and the Liberals have completely botched the process of hiring these watchdogs. I don't know about you, but when I'm hiring somebody, I never pick from a list of one candidate, but that's exactly what the Liberals are trying to force on Parliament. It's not consultation they're doing, it's an insult to this Parliament. Newsflash for the Liberals, these watchdogs don't work for them. They work on behalf of this whole place and on behalf of Canadians. So if they want to work with us, appoint the right watchdogs, use the right process, and end this sham.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, there is no sham that's here. As a government, we respect the independent office of the parliamentarians, of these individuals that serve all parliamentarians. There is a process. That process is being followed. Members across the way are very much aware that the process is in fact being followed, and we are identifying outstanding Canadians that have the ability and the credentials to do what's necessary in these very important positions.
Excellent. Member for Barrie Innisfil.
The Prime Minister's mandate letter told the Finance Minister, and I quote, that his private affairs should bear the closest public scrutiny. When first elected, he told everyone that he would show up to work and that he placed his assets in a blind trust. But instead, he hid his assets from the public in a myriad of numbered companies. He failed to disclose an offshore corporation to the Ethics Commissioner and was fined for that. And the same Commissioner launched an investigation into his introduction of legislation that could benefit his family company. Mr. Speaker, with all these failures, how can the Prime Minister still trust this Finance Minister?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Finance Minister has done what is expected of all ministers, all parliamentarians, which is to work with the Ethics Commissioner. He's met with her when he got to Ottawa, followed all of her recommendations, and has announced that he'd go above and beyond. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I'm a member for Barrie Innisfil.
No, he has not, Mr. Speaker, and there's more. The Ethics Commissioner is looking into the 2015 sale of shares in his family's company after he refuses to explain why he only divested some of those shares and just days before he introduced the new tax measures. Mr. Speaker, the Finance Minister has failed to live up to the standards set by his Prime Minister. Canadians need to know that they can trust the country's Chief Financial Officer, but they've lost trust in this minister. Will he do the right thing and resign?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I fully understand why the opposition, why the Conservatives want to talk about anything but the economy, because when you look at growth in this country, in the last 2 years, the average growth has been twice as high as they had in their years in power. When you look at job creation, it took them 10 years to create close to 1 million jobs. It took us 2 to add 600,000 jobs to the Canadian economy. And to quote the fine Minister of Public Safety, who's recently said, if you want to find as good an economic record, you'd need to look back at the previous Liberal government. They're trying to forget their 10 years. They should be taking notes in terms of how the Finance Minister is managing this economy.
The order. The Honourable Member for Beauce. Mr. Speaker, it doesn't matter what the Liberals do to improve the image of the Finance Minister, it's not working. These allegations are sticking to him, and Canadians know that the Finance Minister has not followed the advice of the Ethics Commissioner and is under investigation because he forgot to declare a villa in Europe, because he tabled a bill that would benefit his company, Chapelle. When will the Prime Minister have his Finance Minister step down? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I mentioned many times in this House, the Ethics Commissioner is there to preserve the integrity of Parliament. The Finance Minister has been working with her and will continue to do so. We want to make sure that all rules are respected at all times. The Honourable Member. Mr. Speaker, I agree with my colleague. The integrity of the Finance Minister has to be the very highest, and this is not the case. Canadians have lost confidence, and now it's business people who are worried. They're seeing increases. They're seeing what's going on. We don't have we want details on tax reform. The small business hasn't had it. We know these measures are going to come into effect the beginning of 2018. They've lost confidence in the Finance Minister. When will the Finance Minister resign? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When we look at the record of the Finance Minister, here we have 600,000 jobs. We've reduced child poverty by 40%. We have an ambitious housing strategy. Mr. Speaker, I think that the Finance Minister has a record that we will certainly compare with any Conservative record.
I think the House likes to listen to the member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier, but I would invite him to listen. The Honourable Member for Laurier-Sainte-Marie. Mr. Speaker, the decision by President Trump to recognize Jerusalem as a capital of Israel is dangerous and ill-advised. It runs counter to the attempts to achieve peace in the region and runs counter to international law and UN resolutions. This is a devastating day for people who believe in peace, justice, and security in the Middle East. Where is Canada's voice to protest this decision? Will Canada condemn this announcement and take formal steps with the American government? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister. Mr. Speaker, Canada is a friend and an ally of Israel and the Palestinian people as well. Canada's position is that the status of Israel cannot be resolved apart from through a general resolution of conflict between the parties. This has been our long-standing position of governments in the past, both Conservative and Liberal. We are committed to sustainable peace in the region, including the creation of a Palestinian state living in security alongside Israel. The Honourable Member for Salaberry. Young people need structure in order to continue to work and live in French. The FJCF is urging the government to invest in Canada-wide organizations like the Francophone Games so that French survives outside Quebec. Yesterday at the Official Languages Committee, we had the impression that the mandate of the Commissioner didn't have much authority to enforce the principles of bilingualism. Will the Liberals commit to giving the Commissioner the authority it needs to ensure the vitality of both official languages across the country? Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. We acknowledge and recognize the importance of both official languages and of our young people young Francophones in this country. We support the Francophone Games in this country as a department. Having said that, my colleague doesn't have much credibility because when it comes to bilingualism, she should speak to her leader about it with respect to what he said about the Supreme Court. So here they're saying one thing outside of Quebec and the opposite, in fact, for Quebec. The Honourable Member for Châteauguay-Lacolle. Mr. Speaker, there is a statistic that has been focused on in the media. Canadians, women, are subject to violence on a daily basis. Gender-based violence has an impact on individuals, families, and communities.
These effects can be long-lasting and profoundly affect many aspects of a person's life. Can the Minister of Status of Women tell this House why it is important to commemorate the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women?
Minister for the Status of Women.
Monsieur le Président, je remercie.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague, the member for Châteauguay-Lacolle, for her question.
A day where 14 young lives ended too soon, a day that shook this country and continues to this day. Today, we recognize that gender-based violence continues, that we all have an opportunity to be part of a solution, that actions by individuals and institutions like this one matter. Today, during the 16 days of action to end gender-based violence, we renew our resolve to do more, not just today, but every day, to ensure that every woman and girl in this country lives free of hate, of misogyny, and sexism.
Well said.
The honourable member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Mr. Speaker, before May of this year, 80% of people with type 1 diabetes were being approved for the disability tax credit. After May, 80% are being rejected. The minister changed the eligibility criteria. For months she denied it, but now we have the documents that prove it. Will the minister now do the right thing and finally admit the truth that she changed the criteria in May?
The Honourable Minister. I want to reassure all Canadians who are receiving the credit for persons with disabilities that the eligibility criteria have not changed. Having said that, I am prepared to listen to the concerns of Canadians from all communities. That is why, November 23rd, I restored the Disability Advisory Committee for Persons with Disabilities. If changes need to be made to the processes at the agency, we will hold those discussions with the experts who participate on that committee. We will work together to ensure that all people eligible receive the credit.
Mr. Speaker, on May 2nd, a memo was sent to all tax collectors who assess applications for the disability tax credit. The memo told them to reject all type 1 diabetics for the disability tax credit unless there are exceptional circumstances. So this was done despite the fact that there is no requirement in the Income Tax Act for Canadians with diabetes that they must have exceptional circumstances to meet the criteria. So a simple question. Did the minister approve this memo? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, as I mentioned earlier, I want to reassure all Canadians receiving the disability tax credit that the eligibility criteria have not changed, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Central Okanagan, Similkameen Nicola.
Mr. Speaker, this minister has a lot to say, but is doing less than nothing for the people that are being denied the disability tax credit with people who have type 1 diabetes. And everyone knows it's true. This minister either has no idea what is going on in her own department or she's intentionally misleading Canadians. Right. Now, either way, people with type 1 diabetes deserve an apology from this minister. Will the minister do the right thing, apologize, and reverse this cold-hearted decision?
The Honourable Minister of National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, I have always worked for vulnerable people as a social worker and administrator today. That is why we have put in place measures to make the credit more accessible. We simplified the forms. We enabled nurses to fill out the forms, and anyone who wants to challenge decisions can call for a review of their file or by appealing that decision, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, every time they raise taxes, the revenue minister keeps saying nothing has changed. Like repeating it over and over somehow makes it true. Nothing has changed for type 1 diabetics who are now being denied under this government. Nothing has changed for small family-run businesses like campgrounds who are being faced with huge new tax bills for being too small to be a small business. Well, Mr. Speaker, it seems like nothing has changed is this code word for huge new tax bills for Canadians. So who's going to be the next victims of the nothing has changed tax increases?
The Honourable Minister for National Revenue. Mr. Speaker, we acknowledge that any type of handicap can have a significant impact on
patients, on their environment, on their families. So that is why the government invested more than $41 million into research on diabetes. That is why in Budget 2017 we invested $5 billion in mental health for young people, Mr. Speaker. That's also why on November 23rd I reestablished the Disability Advisory Committee. We continue to work for the most vulnerable Canadians.
Columbia.
Mr. Speaker, last March I asked whether the government would reject the Calgary Olympic Bid Committee's request to allow Olympic Games at Lake Louise, which could cause irreparable harm to Banff National Park. The answer was that the government had not yet been approached. We've since learned from the media that a formal approach was made to Parks Canada staff and that, and I quote, the federal agency did not shut down those talks. Will the government stop this plan before it goes any further?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the honourable member. Our government is fully committed to protecting the ecological integrity of Canada's national parks. Parks Canada has actually not received a formal proposal, and thus no decisions have been made. Without understanding the implications and the requirements of such a proposal, we're not in the position to make any judgments about what would be involved. If and when we do receive a proposal, we will consider its implications based on a thorough review in the context of existing policy and legislation.
The Honourable Member for Cowichan, Malahat, Langford.
The Cowichan River in my riding is a designated heritage river with significant cultural and historical importance to the Cowichan people. Climate change is causing unprecedented dry springs and summers, and river water flows frequently reach critically low levels, endangering fish and fish habitat. The Liberals promise to protect our communities from climate change with investments in green infrastructure, and the salmon that depend on the Cowichan River need strong federal leadership. Will the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans commit in this House today to providing the federal funds for raising the Cowichan River?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my honourable colleague for the question. We obviously share his concern about fish and fish habitat. The Cowichan River, he's absolutely right, is a critical piece of fish habitat in the country. Our government is committed to doing more to protect and preserve fish habitat. In fact, we committed in the election campaign to returning lost protections to the Fisheries Act. We announced habitat protection programs, including funding to ensure that we do everything necessary to protect these iconic wild fish species, and I look forward to working with my colleague in that regard.
The Honourable Member for Charlebourg, Haute-Saint-Charles. Mr. Speaker, in February, the Minister of Defence stated that we would not be buying used aircraft for our Air Force. But today, we've learned that the Minister wants to help Australia get rid of its rusty old jets. Documents tabled in the House have confirmed that the Minister has no idea what the cost will be for these Australian jets, nor can he justify what gap he's seeking to fill. Will the Minister honour his commitment to not purchase used aircraft and to save Canada from more Liberal waste?
Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, our fighters should have been replaced a long time ago, but they weren't. Mr. Speaker, with our new defence policy, we're going to make sure that our Canadian Armed Forces are well looked after. We're not going to be, we're going to have an open competition, Mr. Speaker, for replacing our fighters. Not 65 like the previous government, Mr. Speaker. It's going to be 88, and the intern gap will be filled. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The member for Parry Sound, Muskoka.
Mr. Speaker, that same minister in February said, and I quote, "We will not be buying used aircraft for our Air Force." But defying all expert advice and financial logic, the Liberals will be buying used, rusted-out aircraft from Australia that date back to the 1980s. The Liberals are far more concerned about politics than doing what's right for our Air Force and for our taxpayers. Will the government abandon this ill-advised purchase of a bucket of bolts and get to work now to permanently replace our CF-18?
Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the extreme passion of the honourable member in purchasing the right equipment for our Canadian Armed Forces. And this is the reason why maybe should have been more passionate to actually purchase the equipment 10 years ago when they should have been replaced, Mr. Speaker. That's why with our new defence policy, Mr. Speaker, we're going to make sure that we're going to be not purchasing 65 aircraft like the previous government, Mr. Speaker, but 88 through a proper and full transparent competition. Thank you.
Honourable Member for Parry Sound, Muskoka.
This is promises, Mr. Speaker. The documents tabled in this House this week confirm that the Defence Minister does not have any clue how much used aircraft Australian jets will cost, when they will be available, and even how many will be available. When the Liberals entered into a blind agreement to purchase jets from Boeing, they embarrassed themselves, turned the procurement into a circus, and wasted 2 years of taxpayers' time and money. Exactly. Will the Defence Minister stick to his commitment, quote, not to buy used aircraft and save Canadians from yet another Liberal boondoggle?
Honourable Minister of National Defence.
Mr. Speaker, our government is ensuring that our Canadian armed forces are well looked after. This is why, with our new defence policy for Canada, we're investing unprecedented amounts in the Canadian armed forces, Mr. Speaker, an additional $63 billion for the next 20 years, Mr. Speaker, to making sure that our Air Force have the right aircraft with the full transparent competition, as is stated, Mr. Speaker, not 65 aircraft like the previous government wanted, Mr. Speaker, but 88. And we're going to make sure that our Canadian armed forces has the right equipment for the next 20 years. Thank you.
Honorable député de Saint-Boniface.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Boniface, Vidal. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This year, an important meeting took place in Ottawa.
First Nations leadership across this country are calling for a new fiscal relationship with the Government of Canada that allows them to plan for and invest in long-term growth and development for their communities. Can the Honourable Minister of Indigenous Services please update this House as to the government's commitment for a new fiscal relations with First Nations?
Honourable Minister of Indigenous Services.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to thank the member from Saint-Boniface Saint Vital for his question. National Chief Bellegarde and I received a report which lays out recommendations for a new fiscal relationship. We are working with First Nations on a number of proposals, including a permanent advisory committee to guide this new relationship, replacing the default prevention and management policy with a new proactive approach, and creating 10-year grants for at least 100 First Nations communities. These are steps toward a new fiscal relationship that is truly nation-to-nation, based on a recognition of rights and on mutual respect.
Hear, hear. Honourable Member for Calgary-Nose Hill.
The Liberals just posted a tender to outsource the creation of Questions for Canada's citizenship test. This contradicts the Liberals' claim that the Citizenship Study Guide is still being developed. On the National Day of Remembrance and Action Against Violence Against Women, we should be standing up for the 200 million women alive today who have undergone female genital mutilation. So has the Prime Minister finally decided to reverse his decision to remove FGM from Canada's Citizenship Guide?
Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Member for posing that question. Just to be clear, the Citizenship Guide has not been written yet. Unlike the previous government, we are actually consulting with Canadians and experts in order to find the right amount of diversity in there. Just to be also clear, we are the party that ended conditional permanent residency, which is a policy that party put vulnerable women in vulnerable situations of abuse, and we eliminated that. And on this day, I'm proud of the fact that we did that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Rosemont, La Petite Patrie. Mr. Speaker, workers at the Davie Shipyard feel abandoned by the Liberal government. In the absence of a short-term contract, 113 people have already lost their jobs and 800 jobs are on the line. And we've got a Liberal government that, despite all the lovely promises, is asleep at the helm. Yet these needs and requirements are real and urgent. If the Liberals wait too long, these specialized workers are going to leave the country and will lose their expertise. When will the Liberals get their acts together, support Davie workers and economic development in the Quebec City region? When will they do that? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are always very concerned by job losses and the impact on workers and their families. We acknowledge and recognize the work of these workers at Davie and acknowledge the work they have done on Asterix. Our government has been in contact with the shipyard. I had a meeting with the leadership there. The Minister of Defence and Transport met with the union. We are doing our utmost to help Davie. The Honourable Member for Sudbury.
There is no one-size-fits-all approach when it comes to First Nations education. We also know that the best way to improve First Nations education outcomes is to support Indigenous-led initiatives and to respect First Nation control of their education. Can the Minister update this House on the government's progress towards supporting First Nations communities in assuming jurisdiction over their own education systems.
I
thank the member from Sudbury for his question. He's absolutely right. First Nations-led and First Nations-governed education systems achieve better results for students. This historic education self-government agreement we signed last summer with 23 participating nations of the Anishinaabe Nation will allow them to take control of delivering education in their own communities. C'est un temps de la première de ce genre.
It's a first of its kind and the most significant in Canada.
Self-determination and ensuring that First Nations students have access to culturally appropriate, highly quality education that meets their needs.
And now it's time to go to the Honourable Member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The new Champlain Bridge is at risk and many of the parts being used are non-compliant. Can the Minister of Infrastructure ensure that henceforth his department will rigorously monitor this site? It must protect the security and safety of workers, control the quality of the products, and ensure that this bridge will last the next 100 years, Mr. Speaker. Will the Minister commit to delivering this bridge without cost overruns by honouring the time frame and not at the expense of safety?
Minister of Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, our government is delivering on our commitment to build a new toll-free Champlain Bridge. As we move forward with the acceleration measures to meet the ambitious construction timeline, the quality of construction is our top priority. On a project of this size, some technical challenges can inevitably arise. Every defective material is corrected before the pieces are assembled. We are committed to delivering a quality bridge that will last 125 years. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's tricky to do this, but I can't ask my question until I express what I think is in all of our hearts. Best wishes to the Minister of Fisheries as he faces his new health challenges. And in my remaining 8 seconds, to the Minister of Health, will she consider working with the health accords with the provinces to pursue all medically necessary autism spectrum disorder treatments, including applied behavior analysis, as part of a Medicare-approved treatment?
Health.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleague for her question. We recognize that autism spectrum disorder has a significant and lifelong impact on individuals and their families. Federal investments in research, data improvement, surveillance, and training skills are supporting those with autism and their family. There are extraordinary stakeholders across the country raising awareness and providing services to families. Our government will certainly continue to provide support for them and for their efforts. Thank you.
I would like to draw to the attention of honourable members the presence in the gallery of Anishinaabe Nation Grand Council Chief Madabi, Deputy Grand Chief Hare, and a delegation of chiefs from Anishinaabe Nation First Nations, as well as community members, to witness the passage of Bill C-61, the Anishinaabe Nation Education Agreement.
It being 3:13 p.m., pursuant to order made on Tuesday, December 5th, 2017, the House will now proceed to the taking of the deferred recorded division on the motion at the third reading stage of Bill C-58. Call in the members.
Whips are getting faster all the time.
The question is the following one. Mr. Bryson, seconded by Mr. Sajjan, moved that Bill C-58, an act to amend the Access to Information Act and the Privacy Act, and to make consequential amendments to other acts, be now read a third time and do pass. All those in favor of the motion will please rise.
Mr. Hare.
Mr. Hare.
Mr. O'Regan.
Mr. O'Regan.
Mr. Sargent.
Mr. Sargent.
Ms. Pettipat-Taylor.
Mr. Pettipat-Taylor.
Mr. Goodale.
Mr. Goodale.
Madame Joly.
Madame Joly.
Monsieur Leblanc.
Monsieur Leblanc.
Ms. Qualtrough.
Ms. Qualtrough.
Mr. Bryson.
Mr. Bryson.
Ms. Wilson-Raybould.
Ms. Wilson-Raybould.
Madame Le Boutillier.
Madame Le Boutillier.
Madame Bibeau.
Madame Bibeau.
Mr. Hussain.
Mr. Hussain.
Ms. Haidu.
Ms. Haidu.
Ms. Bennett.
Ms. Bennett.
Mrs. Philpott.
Mrs. Philpott.
Ms. Mahaichuk.
Ms. Mahaichuk.
Mr. Casey Cumberland Colchester.
Mr. Casey Cumberland Colchester.
Mr. Easter.
Mr. Easter.
Ms. Fry.
Ms. Fry.
Mr. McKay.
Mr. McKay.
Ms. Groh.
Ms. Groh.